What happens to high-performing teams when the leader leaves? Yesterday, I made some delicious Ghanaian peanut butter chicken and rice. And this delightful dish I learned how to make from my very dear friends and former teammates from Ghana. And in addition to powerfully great food, Ghana also has a tremendously powerful history. See, the role of Ghanaian women in connected collaboration towards independence in the late 1940s and 50s led to the freedom of the people, and it's truly remarkable. See, brave women joined in the riots and the boycotts of imported European goods in the late 1940s. And these same riots led to the arrest of several members of the Big Six, which essentially were the leading men and future leaders of independence in Ghana. And with the imprisonment of these men, the movement didn't stop. In fact, the women stepped up and they led the movement in their absence. The progress of the team did not end with the leaders. In fact, the female seamstress turned spokeswoman, Hannah Cujo, organized, inspired, and led in rallies and organized protests across the country. A new team of leaders emerged in connected ownership of a great vision. Empowered women took the leadership and they collaborated to host maverick protests to progress the movement. They protested the imprisonment of the Big Six leaders, and they raised funds for the UGCC independence leaders. The women then began to publish articles in protest of British rule, and they mobilized the people towards independence. Hannah Cujo and Amma Nkrumah went on to work with the CPP in 1951 and continued efforts towards the eventual independence of Ghana in 1957. And this brings up a really great point of what happens with great teams whenever leaders step down. When a leader steps down, becomes terminated or imprisoned or just moved or invited to be successful elsewhere, or even if just the dynamics change, maybe now the leader is covering for two departments in addition to their original one, and those team dynamics have changed. How do great teams respond? Well, first, great teams take ownership of their ideas. See, when the Big Six leading the movement were imprisoned, the ideas and progress towards independence did not stop with them. In great teams, the vision and the mission does not die with the leadership. In fact, great teams don't rely on somebody else to ensure the execution of those ideas. And in your team, you can encourage others to take ownership of ideas and of the vision of the organization by proactively and supportively giving ownership towards that vision while the leadership is present. And then the thought of a leadership dynamic change is not really a crippling possibility. Also, great teams take ownership of their action and their behavior. Great teams manage themselves. Also, these team members are not managing themselves simply to advance in leadership. And though this could be a byproduct, but the actual reason, the true purpose behind managing your behavior is simply to be your best and that you expect the best of yourself. See, if you are managing yourself simply to get a promotion, then at some point, whenever you are promoted to your peak and you have reached your ultimate peak, then what's the motivation to continue to do your best? This concept boils down to the motive of the team members' participation in the work. See, the Ghanaian independence movement would have probably faltered completely or have been severely delayed if the Ghanaian women had simply sat in solidarity when the Big Six were imprisoned. But they actually did the opposite. They took control of their actions and behaviors to further progress and lead a country towards freedom. Great teams know this, and they look for behavioral ownership in the beginning stages of recruitment. And then they see this throughout that recruitment process as they are training their new team members. And finally, great teams also take ownership of the narrative and of the communication. Great teams do not let the circumstance or lack of positional leadership control the narrative. No, great teams take a hold of the narrative and they write the communication for action to move forward. In this example, the Ghanaian women literally wrote the history of their country. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to ask a really difficult question. If your leadership was gone today, whether that be from budget cuts, organizational restructuring, or just the nature of work, if those team dynamics changed, is your team prepared to continue to perform at a great level? Is your team prepared to continue to progress the vision of the organization? And this is a really, really difficult question to ask. No one wants to think about the possibility of a positional leader leaving, but it is a possibility, and it's unwise to assume that your team is going to have the grit and determination of the brave Ghanaian women. So is your team equipped to progress your organization towards your vision? And do your people take ownership, or do the people on your team take ownership of their behaviors now? And does your team have a mindset to control the narrative? And these tough questions can really help guide you in preparing your team for high performance in trying times. And this is how we can continue to perform at a higher level.